Hey everyone, Sean Gander here with Simplify Accounting. Today we're diving into an important topic for Canadian taxpayers, which is what happens if you don't file your tax return on time in Canada. Let's break it down. First, let's talk about why you should file your tax returns on time. Besides it being a legal requirement and your civic duty, if you're just an employee with a T4 slip, then you're probably entitled to a tax refund. And you may be missing out on benefits like the Canada Child Benefit, the carbon rebate, GST rebates, etc. by not filing. What if you owe taxes though? Sometimes people don't file because they know that they're gonna owe a whole bunch of taxes and they just don't have the cash to pay those taxes. If you know you're gonna owe taxes, that's more the reason to file, because if you don't file, it just makes it worse. What happens is you can get hit with late filing penalties. If you don't have the cash to pay your taxes and you file on time, the CRA will charge you interest, but they'll charge you interest, they'll backdate it regardless of when you file. But if you file late, they're going to charge you penalties, which they will not charge you if you file on time. So if you know you'll owe those taxes, you'll owe some cash, file on time, talk to the CRA, come up with a payment plan, then you can at least avoid all the late filing penalties. Other people don't file, I think probably just as an act of protest. You have Canadians that are just frustrated with the amount of taxes that we pay, with government spending, where that spending is going. And I'm with you on that. I mean, I don't agree with most of the decisions that politicians make, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't file. You may have a friend or a relative that hasn't filed for like 10 years and the CRA hasn't gone after them yet, so you figure you're probably okay, right? I mean, what's the worst that can happen? Well, let me tell you a few stories. And these are real stories, real people, real numbers, names are fake. We'll start with Bob. Bob had a company. He hadn't filed corporate or personal taxes in over 5 years. The CRA demanded that he file these tax returns, but he ignored those demands. And so what happened, because he ignored those demands, is they notionally assessed him and his wife with a buttload of income. They essentially came up with numbers and told them that they owed a bunch of taxes based on fake numbers. We're talking a couple $100,000 each year personally in income that they would owe taxes on, along with the company being assessed in over $100,000 in payroll taxes, even though the company had no employees. There was no payroll in the company, yet the company got assessed with like $100,000 in payroll taxes. Just total fake numbers. And this resulted in hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes owing. Here's the kicker. It's completely within the CRA's rights to do this. They can, if they demand that you file tax returns, they can use whatever numbers they decide to come up with without really justifying them. And usually they'll try to use some numbers that they think are appropriate, but they can essentially come up with numbers and assess you based on those random fake numbers. And once assessed, collections can start coming after you and start legal action. The CRA, they can seize assets, freeze bank accounts, garnish wages. They have a lot of power. You really don't want to mess with them. I haven't ever dealt with the mafia, but I feel like they may be more flexible than the CRA at times. And you know, by the time Bob came to us, it was too late. He had already negotiated a legal settlement with the CRA. He entered into a consumer proposal. There wasn't anything that we could do for him. And to be fair, people do need to take accountability for their actions. It really sucks, and my heart goes out to people like Bob, but situations like this can be completely avoided by just filing on time. Let me share another story with a different ending. It's about Molly. She called me up this past year. She didn't know what to do. She'd received a letter from collections from the CRA saying that she owed over $130,000 in taxes. She was like, Sean, there's no way I owe $130,000 in taxes. I didn't even make that much money. And so I'm like, okay, well, let's check this out. And so logged into her CRA online account, and I found out that she had not filed personal taxes for 9 years. And the CRA had sent a demand that she file those tax returns. And because she had not filed those tax returns, did not respond to that demand, they notionally assessed her with essentially fake income, came up with a tax number, and told her that she owed that much in taxes. And here's the thing, the CRA, the departments don't really talk to each other. And so even those were notional assessments, collections doesn't care. They just see that a taxpayer owes a tax balance, and they will start legal action and they will start collecting on that tax balance. And that's what they threatened to do. What we did did is we filed 9 years of personal tax returns for Molly. And after filing those 9 years of personal tax returns, she actually ended up being entitled to an $18,000 refund compared to a $130,000 owing. That's almost $150,000 swing. And it would have been a higher refund if she had filed on time because she had overpaid on CPP and EI for several years. And you can't get a refund for overpayment on CPP and EI if you file more than 4 years late. So she lost out on those refunds. So as a recap, consequences for not filing on time, penalties and interest can be huge. An immediate late filing penalty is 5% on the taxes owing. So if you owe $1,000 in taxes, that'd be $50, which isn't huge. But if you owe 10 grand, like you're talking $500, it adds up. But it's not just the 5%, it's 5% plus 1% per month up to 12 months. So that could be up to 17%. But if the CRA has issued a demand to file and have assessed you with a late filing penalty in the past 3 years, they can actually charge you 10% of your taxes owing plus 2% per month up to 20 months, which is 50%. And so if you think about it, like if you have 10 grand owing, let's say you don't file for 10 years and you have 100 grand owing, they could charge you a $50,000 late filing penalty on all those taxes. It's nuts. And then on top of that, they would charge you with interest, and their interest rates are pretty high. They're based on legislation. It goes off of Bank of Canada's rates. They list their prescribed rates on what they charge. It's been 10% over the past couple of years. Right now it's 9%. It fluctuates, but it's still pretty high. So penalties and interest can be huge. Loss of benefits such as Canada Child Benefit, GST, HST credits. For business owners, if you file more than 4 years late on your GST returns, then there can be some pretty hefty consequences. What the CRA can do is they can deny the GST that you've paid on expenses, the input tax credits. And so typically what happens with GST returns is, let's say that you collected $10,000 in GST and you paid $6,000 in GST. Well, then you only have to remit $4,000 to the CRA. But if it's been over 4 years and you haven't filed those GST returns, the CRA can come back and say, hey, look, no, we're not going to give you that $6,000 back that you paid. We want you to pay the full $10,000, which really sucks. Not filing on time can also draw unnecessary attention to yourself. Don't do that. Don't ever draw unnecessary attention to yourself with the CRA. And then of course, collections actions, which can be pretty severe. So how do you avoid this in the future? Well, just file on time. That's your best line of defense. If you do not file on time, or if you have not filed on time, then talk to an accountant and try to get those tax returns filed. Contact the CRA, contact collections, answer the phone when they call you, explain your situation, try to come up with a payment plan, try to work with them. But yeah, file those tax returns on time. If you are assessed with an amount you do not agree with, you have 90 days to file a notice of objection. And if you don't file that notice of objection, then the CRA doesn't really have to do anything if you decide later on that you want to change that. And so it's important to deal with this on time. To avoid it in the future, set reminders of any tax deadlines that you have. If you're a business owner, you may have personal tax deadlines, corporate tax deadlines, GST, payroll, etc. Make sure you have access to your CRA online account. We see this issue all the time where people, they simply don't get their mail because they're registered with CRA online. Maybe they don't check their email, or maybe it goes to their spam. They don't get notifications. They don't get mail sent to their house. And all of a sudden they have these demands to file. They have these various issues, but they're not even aware of them because they don't see their mail. So make sure you have access to your CRA online account, check your mail, update your address with the CRA. It's also going to make tax installments if you owe them. CRA will usually tell you if you have a tax installment requirement. If you don't make tax installments throughout the year, that's essentially prepaying your taxes ahead of time because you owe too much in taxes in the prior year. The CRA will charge you with installment interest, which you do not want. That's it for today's video. I hope this information has helped you understand the importance of filing your taxes on time and the steps that you can take if you've missed a deadline. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.